Record. All right. Hi, everyone, for Love Rising. We are so excited to be here yet another week, and we are talking even more about mindset. And this week, we are actually going to be talking about bringing mindfulness to wealth consciousness. So we're super excited about our guest. I'll share just a brief bio, and then she is going to kind of elaborate and talk further about who she is and how she's really come to be an expert around wealth consciousness and attracting abundance, which if you've listened to our podcast before, we are big fans of both of those things. So we're going to welcome Cristina Bold to the podcast. So welcome, Cristina. So just a brief bio on her. She is a money mindset mentor and obsessed and passionate about helping visionary healers, coaches, and mentors remember who they are, connect with their power, and create wealth from alignment and flow. And an interesting fact that she just gave with us with the bio is that she was a banking executive for about 6 years and worked in the advertising industry for yet another 8. So I'm sure it's going to be really interesting kind of hearing how you got to where you were, and you have this experience of working in banking and advertising. So we're just so excited to have you here, Cristina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's so funny because I was listening to you introducing me, and I was like, oh my God, that is really eclectic. It's a pile of everything in there. I think that that's very, different kind of background experiences really contributed to who I am today, and helps everything in there helps me see things from very different facets. Ladies, I'm just pissed off about something. My image is coming out very bleak because one of the cameras is not working. Please let me know if this works better like this.
Yeah, they both were working for me.
Yeah, cool. I suppose that we can cut there and I can start whatever right now.
Yeah, so I think that's perfect. Why don't we cut? I'm going to jump back in and say, so can you share your story with us, and then we'll kind of move forward. Does that work?
Totally.
Yay.
Sorry. Now I will just behave.
You're good. All right, so we'll pause. All right, wonderful, Cristina. I absolutely agree with you. I think it's so fascinating when we kind of have this eclectic past, and it brings us to really where we're supposed to be and helps to shape kind of what we're passionate about. So I would love to hear a little bit more about your story and how you got to where you are.
Well, my story, in a way, it's an old story. It's the story of a girl meets a guy, meets a boy, and they fall in love. And just unfortunately, the boy was living like in the other part of the continent. We are living in Europe. So I had to make a decision, and the decision was stay without the boy or go and join the boy. And I decided for this, giving a try to the couple life, and that meant literally leaving behind my entire life, leaving behind my career, leaving behind my life, my country, and starting completely new, like from the scratch. And as exciting and in a way romantic the change can sound, it was also a big transformation, because it was cutting with everything in the past and just being pushed into discovering myself and discovering a new way of being, reinventing myself. It was not really easy, but definitely it was a moment of opportunity of discovering truly who I was and going back to the core and tapping into deeper truths than the ones that I had been living. So before, I had a nice career, a nice life, checking in, all the correct boxes of everything that I was supposed to be and have by that age. But I was not really happy. And then I realized that there should be more, something more than just a beautiful corporate career with a comfortable living, let's say so. So for me, moving country and starting a new life in a completely different place with completely different people with a language that I was not even speaking at that moment was a huge moment of transformation. And that was also an opportunity for me to check in really what I wanted to do with my life. And something bubbled up. It was not something new. It was something that had always been there. But that now was the moment for me to really express and bloom all that part of me being me. And that's what brought me here to today.
I love that. And I think so many people can either relate to a story like that in a sense that something happened in their life that really kind of shook things up and they were like, oh, okay, well, I have to dig deep now and I have to really get clear on what it is that I want. Or I think the other thing that our listeners can admire or maybe be inspired by is knowing that, hey, if something's going on in your life right now that you are feeling a little bit like resistant towards, that maybe if you move towards that and it's a little scary, it all works out okay, some way or the other. So I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you. So what's that? Go ahead.
So welcome in the sense that sometimes, or most of the times, change can be really scary, and we are always have a certain resistance to change, even if we are, deep down desiring it. So this is one of the things that I'm also working on with all my clients. In a way, they want, and we all want the things that we say that we want, but the reason why we don't get them is because actually we are really scared of what would happen if that desire really comes true. So yeah, it's a really interesting dimension of us going towards our desires.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because it really is this fear will hold you back from making such beautiful transformational changes. And a lot of times I guess I feel like when changes are happening, many times money or the money mindset is somehow involved. I mean, really, whether it's you're moving across the country or, I mean, maybe, you're deciding to leave a relationship. A lot of times, sometimes money and fear will be attached. And so as we talk about, wealth consciousness today, I would love to kind of transition into knowing what is wealth consciousness in your eyes, and why is it important to be aware of?
It's first of all, I think that money is such an important dimension of our lives, because money means freedom and money means choices. So when you are not enjoying fully this freedom and choices, comes constriction. Now, this leads us to what wealth consciousness is. Wealth consciousness is, in my view, I would usually define it by the opposite, because we are more, fortunately, or mostly unfortunately, we are more educated in the spirit of a scarcity consciousness and limitedness, if you want, consciousness, where we stay in the paradigm either or. I can either have this or that. Making the right choices by trying to save or to go for the cheaper part, because you feel that the resources are limited. That is the scarcity consciousness, right? Where you always feel limited. You always have to choose. You always feel that there is not enough. Now, this is something that we are always surrounded by, and we are educated in this spirit. Unfortunately, we all know about the money, how money doesn't grow on trees, and how, we just have enough, but it's better to have just enough and be moral than be rich and filthy. And these are all lines that I'm finding that happen in all the languages. I mean, literally money doesn't grow on trees. It's a way of saying that I find it across different kind of cultures and languages, which shows how deeply rooted this scarcity consciousness is. Now, at the other extreme, or the how should I say? On the other hand, we have the wealth consciousness, which is something that only now we start understanding as how important it is. And that is the consciousness where you change the either or paradigm to end. Like, I will be going on vacation and buy this nice thing that I really want. I will be having, a beautiful, wonderful, successful business and have a fulfilling relationship, right? So you feel that you have choices. You decide that you will have choices, and you'll be creating choices for yourself. You decide that whatever your soul desires, it's something that you will eventually be achieving. And you feel that there is no limit to the abundance that you can access. Now, this doesn't really come naturally, as we said, because we are not educated. The consciousness around is not a wealth consciousness. It's a more limited scarcity consciousness. But I feel that the more we go in this journey of this period that in which era, if you may, in which we are living right now, the more our collective consciousness is growing, is expanding, and the more we are all as a collective tapping into the wealth consciousness. And that's the change, I think, that most of us, or many of us, is seeking right now. I don't know if this answers really your question.
So good.
I hope it does.
Totally does. I'm totally on board and completely understand what you're talking about. But I think because I was just having a conversation with a friend who, very much probably hasn't even, because I remember when I first started thinking about scarcity consciousness versus abundance consciousness, and it was like, my mind kind of exploded for a while about it, because it was like, oh my God, I see scarcity everywhere, like everywhere, in time and money and things and relationships. And when I kind of just started, when my mind started opening up to the idea that mindset around these things actually matters, or that I actually have control over, how I view, because it was just a given, right? It was like, of course there's not enough money. Of course there's not enough time. It wasn't like that was even a question. So I guess what my question is here is, like, for someone who, like my friend that I was just having a conversation with, who maybe has never thought of money like this, right? Because I think we can get so hung up with money, like, well, I obviously don't have enough money. There's only $100 in my bank account. Like, well, what do you mean I can think about this differently? I feel very, tight, or very, very much in scarcity, because that's the reality, right? Like, that's how people kind of argue about that. It's like, well, this is the reality. I have these bills to pay, and I have these kids to take care of. And so I would just love to hear what you would say to someone in that conversation where you're trying to kind of introduce them to, like, this concept of, like, hey, maybe it's not a great way to talk about your money like that,
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and while I do see your point, there is one. There are two ways of answering this, or two dimensions of the answer that I will be giving you. The first one is, if someone is really caught into their financial struggle and into the spinning, and not really willing to, or available for getting out of there through expanding their consciousness, then this conversation has no point, right? So I'm personally never coaching anyone or giving any advanced advices to anyone that no one that is not really asking for them. and is not willing to accept this other kind of perspective and way of looking at things and perceiving them. So that would be one very important thing. Someone that is not really available for letting go of the struggle and of the spinning, is not coachable, and is not really available for receiving help. Now, if the person already knows that there is another way, and that would give anything in order to change the things, and knows already, is conscious of the importance of going inside, turning inside and starting the work from there, then I would give the following answer, which is something that I am usually sharing also with all my private clients when they come and say, look, Cristina, I really, really want to believe in expansion and in abundance, but then I look at my bank account and the reality there is really dire, and I don't know exactly how to connect this with, going to the next level. And I'm always explaining it like this: the physical presence is just one dimension of you. You always have other bodies, which are the emotional bodies, the energetic body, the mental body, that are not really the physical, are not, they are separate from the physical reality where you are living. So even if your physical reality is here and your physical body is experiencing all these things that you are seeing in your physical reality, you still have other bodies and other dimensions of your presence and of your being where you can start living a different kind of reality. So imagine that you can be here with your bank account physically, but then emotionally, mentally, energetically, you start projecting yourself into other possibilities, because all possibilities are available to you at any given moment. It's just a matter of where you are placing your attention, your energy, your emotions, and then that unfolds as your current reality. Imagine as you are in a matrix where at any given moment you are jumping from one possibility to another just by the way you are choosing to place your attention. Now, if you start placing your energy, your emotions, your mental in different kind of possibilities, then little by little also your physical world will be starting to follow those energetic, emotional, mental choices that you are making. So what I'm actually saying to conclude is that you can live one physical reality and accept it for what it is because it is there. It's obvious that it's there. It's a reality, but that's not the only reality that you can experience or you can choose to experience. You can choose to experience completely different possibilities at the different other levels of your being, and then little by little, the physical reality, which is the last one to follow, will follow, because it's inevitable, right? When you are giving a direction, it's like when you are driving. If you are driving and you are looking straight ahead, you are going ahead, but if you are looking sideways, then also your car will be inevitably at some point going towards that direction. It's always a matter of where you are placing your attention, because that's where also the energy will flow. Make sense?
Oh my gosh, yes. So Clara and I love, actually, there's a book called Greatest Human Potential. Have you read that?
Not sure, that I'm not familiar. Who wrote it?
Clara will know when she gets back. I will send you the link. You're going to love it because it talks all about these dimensions in it. And so I'm so glad that you happened to bring it up, because we've kind of been playing around and discussing that lately. But I think something that's really important, and I kind of want to harken this back to a couple weeks ago, we spoke with Shell Hamilton about the 3 languages of your subconscious mind. And so when we're talking about money and abundance, I think people forget that the words that they say project what they're going to experience so much. And so because obviously our subconscious mind only experiences pictures, feelings, and then what was the third one, Clara?
Tone of voice.
tone of voice. And so I think it's so important when we're thinking about our subconscious mind and creating the reality we want to see with our finances and just abundance in general. It's important to remember that, when you were saying, I can have this or this, that projects that onto our future into another dimension and says, okay, well, then you can only have those things. But if we shift it and we can say, I can have the Sprinter van and I can travel to Europe, then that's what's created, And so, so I just wanted to bring that up. I want to encourage our listeners to really start to pay attention to the words around any finances, but also just abundance in general. And then also, I would love for us to touch a little bit further on the energy around money and abundance. And so how can we begin to shift our mindset around shift our mindset so that the energy around abundance and around finances and everything becomes more in alignment with what we desire to experience?
Well, first of all, it's a matter of starting to become aware of what is happening. I'm always encouraging my clients and my students in my programs to start paying attention to the stories that they are running and playing in their mind. And because only when you start paying attention and you become aware of the stories, you actually can start shifting them. And people will always... I'm working mainly with people that understand really mindset. They are either mindset coaches or healers, so spiritual mentors, and they do this kind of work with other people. And then they come and they say, how come I help so many people, but I can't do this for myself? And I'm always saying that there is always a part of blind spots where you need someone else to hold the space for you in order for you to be able to shed the light, because otherwise we always get blocked at the gates of our ego or our subconscious, however you want to define it, right? So even these very, let's say, skilled people in when it comes to mindset and mindset work, start getting pretty surprised and shocked when they really see the patterns and the stories that they are playing in their head, and then those stories play out in their own lives and realities. So it's important to understand, obviously, the stories. It's important to understand how much deserving you feel for receiving whatever your soul desires to receive, because again, those can be blocks that might be limiting the capacity to receive actually, or the capacity to receive with ease, because there are people who believe that they might be deserving, but only after putting lots of hard work or sacrifice or time and energy investment. And then obviously it's also a dimension of the energy and the emotions, which requires a little bit of digging in the past stories, in the moments where you associated negative meanings to money, to what money can be, what money comes with, and what money can stir or trigger in your life. Because your subconscious mind, as long as you have negative associations with anything, actually will always be protecting you to keep you're safe, or not safe, but protected from that source of possible pain or suffering, right? So it's really important to understand the negative associations. It's important to understand and obviously to release. It's important to dissolve the emotional baggage that you are carrying from the past, and then the stories that you've been playing, negative stories that are limiting you or are just keeping you away of money, because it might be considered as something that can cause pain in any way, or is immoral, or is dangerous, or can put your relationship in trouble, or might cause pain to some other people because you are outshining them. There is also this loyalty to the family, especially to the parents, that I'm seeing, and people speak very, very little about this. but actually it's a huge block. Many of my clients would play small because they are afraid of downplaying the sacrifice and hard work of their family, of their parents, that might have worked a lot and might have made huge sacrifices in order to support their family. And now, as successful entrepreneurs, earning money with ease is perceived by many people as a way of dishonoring the sacrifice and hard work of their parents. So there are all these dimensions that need to be looked into. And also there is something that I'm always explaining as a wealth thermostat, which is actually the way you've been programmed to hold the energy of abundance, of wealth in your space. Meaning we are basically born with this thermostat attached to our brain, if you may, if you want to imagine it like that. And in the early years, this thermostat is being programmed for what is the limit, or which are the limits of tolerance when it comes to our abundance. If we go below those limits, mechanism will be kicking in and we'll be doing different stuff that are necessary for us to bring ourselves within the wealth limits that we tolerate. But also, if more abundance than we are capable to hold in our space enters our lives, usually what happens? We are subconsciously creating ways to send that money away, right? So all these are things that definitely people need to start looking at. What are their tolerance limits when it comes to abundance? What are the stories, the associations that they have with money? What are some emotional memories that are painful or are associating money with pain? What is the emotional baggage that needs to be released around money and around self-worth? Because that's a huge component of allowing yourself or giving yourself permission to receive. And then just being vigilant, really being vigilant when it comes to all the stories that we are telling ourselves and we are playing again and again and again in our heads. So it's really an ongoing story, an ongoing work. But what I'm seeing is that once you start really automating these habits, it becomes easier and easier. And obviously also the manifestation around in our reality becomes more and more visible and powerful.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I have a personal question. So and I'm just thinking about how to phrase it. So one of the stories that I am working on and through and growing, expanding around is that to make money, you have to work really hard. Mm-hmm. So pretty classic story, right? Like you have to work really hard to make money. If you want to make a lot of money, then you're going to have to work even more hard. Or that, like passion equals sacrifice almost, right? So if you have something that you're really passionate about, you have to make those choices, like you were talking at the beginning. Like I have to choose this over this, or can't have both, right? So the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about is, so there's that story, but then the other thing I've been thinking about is desirability, worth versus worthiness. And is there a difference in those? Because I think, everyone's worthy of everything they want. Absolutely. Like on a soul level. But do we all deserve it? Like, but is my story around you have to work really hard to do this kind of getting in the way of that worthiness versus desirability concept, right? And then making it feel like, well, yes, I'm worthy of this, but do I deserve it? Did I work hard enough?
Okay. So first of all, what I'm seeing usually is that the work hard program comes from actually not feeling deserving enough. So you need to work hard in order to feel that you are deserving. So you give yourself permission to actually receive what you want. Every time when I see this program of working hard, I'm going to and digging into how much that person really owns their value. And this brings us in the part of deservability versus worthiness that you mentioned. I feel that, and this is my experience so far while working with lots and lots of amazing women. You don't feel deserving when you are not owning the value of being you. When you don't feel valuable enough as a person, when you don't own your power and you don't own who you are, right? And then it's as a reflection of that, you can't own either the value of the work that you are putting out there in the world. So let's say if you, Kylee, or you, Claire, you are not owning the value of being you, then you cannot stand confidently behind the value of your work. So then you don't feel that your work or whatever you are putting out there is worth it, for being compensated in the way that you would hope or would, on the other hand, desire to be compensated. I feel that worthiness and deservability are really interchangeable concepts in a way, because they all boil down to the same thing: how much you own your own value. Because from there, everything radiates. The way you are valuing your work, the way you are owning the value of your work, the way you feel worthy to be paid at a certain level, they all, in the end, have the same root: how worthy you feel, how valuable you feel, how much you own your own value as a person.
Right. But just push back a little bit. So I think what has to happen, and I think we're saying the same thing too, but like when you expand your worthiness, so you're not necessarily your, bottom line worthiness, because that's always the same. But when you expand your consciousness of your worthiness, there are things like nothing changes if you don't, right? So like it's almost like deservability maybe is going through the process of expanding your worth, right? Because like you can't just sit back and be like, I'm worthy, and have like checks come to you. I mean, I just feel like, because I feel like sometimes like this wealth consciousness stuff can turn into that. Like people are kind of saying like, you're worthy, and like, just imagine it, and like, and love yourself, and like, it's just going to like magically happen. But I guess, but I am aware that like, I do have this story about the work, right? So like, I kind of get, I kind of get like bunched up about it. But I do feel like the deservability comes from walking the path of expanding the consciousness, which can sometimes feel like work, or can sometimes be.
So you see how you are always putting the need to do something in order to have what you want to have.
Yeah.
Which is the way you have your mind conditioned. But the truth is that if that would be soul aligned, like you would not feel the necessity for putting in the work, and you would feel that you could just be, and just by being, be paid and attract the different kind of synergies in your life that will be giving you whatever your soul desires are, then that is possible also. Just that in your case, it's not aligned. Like you would probably get bored, right? Just to sit and levitate and money to, be thrown to you. So then you need, most of us, right, needs to do something. And as a result of that, to receive the money, to receive the impact, to receive whatever are the other results that we want to receive, right? But what I'm saying here is that you could literally just sit, if that was aligned, and have the money coming to you if your energy was aligned with that and was working at that level. Now, in our reality, in which most probably is not aligned to just sit, we can choose to do the work we love, to take inspired action, to follow soul and alignment, and allow it to be easy. To be easy, the payment part, the finances part. And guess what? If you work with yourself, with your programs, with releasing your blocks, releasing the emotional baggage around all that, then it gets to be easy. It gets to be just you creating your art, expressing your soul, sharing your truth, and getting paid for that without working hard. Because it's not like you don't need to put the work in this dimension and paradigm of ours. It's not like you don't need to put the work, but when you are taking inspired action, when you are just following the flow and the excitement and the passion inside, it doesn't really feel like hard work. It just feels like, let's go to play, basically, right? Let's go to have fun. Let's go to get energized. Let's go to and play. It's the play of our soul, the game of our soul, right? So it's, at a certain level, you can even not do the work. At our level, where it doesn't feel aligned, not to do any work, we can choose to take inspired action, to follow the flow, to follow our soul desires, and have it easy. Have it easy in all aspects of being compensated and receiving everything that our soul desires. But you see me repeating this, what our soul desires, not what our mind desires, not what we believe that would be cool to have or that we are supposed to have, what is aligned and really makes our soul feel like, yeah, that feels right, that feels good. Does it make sense now?
Totally. Yep. Totally.
Another aspect that I'm seeing,
I just have to hear it in so many different ways,
Totally, and that's true for all of us. I mean, there are those things. I have clients that we are always in a way repetitive with our message, right? And I have clients that are in my mastermind or programs for several months, and at different stages, they come to me and say, "Oh my God, now I get it. I heard you saying it in so many ways. No, literally, finally, I feel inside that I'm getting it." And that's true. It's a moment when, everything has to build in a certain direction, and we are embracing the message and the truth when we are ready for it, even if it has been always gravitating there around us.
Yeah. I feel like a good metaphor for that, just around like why it's important to hear these messages, especially around these like mindset things over and over again, that like these truths are like a diamond. They're like a huge diamond, right? Like they're so bright and beautiful and perfect, but we hear different teachers and we need different perspectives, because it's like we're walking around this diamond and we kind of get blinded by it. But when we've walked around it, or at least seen, 3/4 of it, then we can actually grasp what it is. If you're just like standing up against like a diamond in a small room, you could be like, what is that? I don't know what it is, So like, anyway, that just makes me remember why I need to hear the same things over and over again from different people and in different ways.
That brought another analogy, I just visualized this image while I was listening to you. Maybe another explanation why we need to listen to the same truth over and over until we really get it is because of the energy. Like, we are so conditioned, and we have all these layers of conditioning that make us forget who we are and what are really our truths, that actually staying in the energy of those truths, the energy of those mentors, helps us, peel little by little all those layers until we literally get it, finally get it, because we go back to us. We go back to the core, because we finally peeled enough in order to get in touch with that truth from the inside. Does it make sense?
Yes, so much. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because I was going to say something on it. how, like, especially with any personal development type stuff, whether it be around abundance, anything, it's so important to come back to. For instance, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time and you're like, yeah, I kind of connected with it, but I'm working on money mindset stuff, so it was a little hard for me. But if you, a month or 6 months or a year down the road, come back and revisit it, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I get it. Oh, that hits me. So it's always so important as we grow as a person and expand and step more into our true self that we revisit some of these really powerful tools, like a book or a podcast. And because it's amazing, I'm just rereading a book that I'm like I've read it twice already, and I'm like underlining new stuff, but so it's just always so important that we do that
differently. In different moments, we have different ways of understanding the same things. Yeah. Because we are looking through different lenses, probably.
Mm-hmm. So can you please come on again? We're going to have you on again. You are just phenomenal. So Cristina, we are so grateful, I guess, to have you on. And there's two things I would love for you to kind of wrap up with, because we know you got to go. Is one, we always love to give our listeners kind of like one easy to do tool that they can start today around wealth consciousness and abundance. Mm-hmm. So if there's something maybe you could throw their way, that would be awesome.
Well, if people are really in the beginning, and not even in the beginning, even with the more advanced people when it comes to this journey of shifting their money mindset or wealth consciousness, I find that there is a very simple exercise that really makes wonders. And that is, I'm asking people to say or to list all the reasons why they can't or won't achieve their goals or their money goals or whatever goal desire when it comes to their finances. And really, really write everything, like brain dump, without filtering, without editing it, without really or judging it in any way, because there can be silly reasons, crazy reasons, stupid reasons, whatever comes up, just write it down on that list. And then look on that list and go for each one of them and ask yourself, is it really true? And most probably 99 of the cases is not really true. And then ask yourself, what is the real truth? And rewrite the story. And if by any means, there are some things there on the list. For instance, I will be judged and people will be mean to me, right? And you ask yourself, is this really true? And the answer from inside comes, yeah, that's a possibility. It can happen. Then a very useful question is, but this is really important or relevant or strong enough in order to stop me from going and pursuing my soul mission? And check for what is the answer that comes up. That can really change lots of things, because when you shed light on the reasons that are keeping you to play small, first of all, you detach yourself, you separate a little bit from that energy, just because you push it outside of yourself and you start looking at it, and that already is a separation. And then just by doing that already, you make yourself a huge service. But then if you also start dissolving the power of each of those stories by rewriting it, that is really huge. I see a huge impact in getting into the awareness of what is really blocking you and starting to shift the stories with more empowering ones. And when I say more empowering ones, it's not I don't know, let's take an example. It's so hard to make money, right? And is it really true? It can be true. But what is a more empowering story? A more empowering story cannot be, now it's really easy, because your mind will not accept it. But you can go to the level where it feels positive, empowering, and still true. Like, I now give myself permission to allow it to get easier and easier, for instance, right? And then you work with that until you really internalize that new story. You will be starting to see also changes in your reality, and from there you can up level into now everything flows easy, or money comes easily to me, or whatever is the next level for you. So also, as a side note, when you are shifting your own stories into more empowering, positive ones, it's really important to create new stories that feel empowering, but you can accept as being true. Otherwise, you are just pushing against your subconscious mind, and that will just create conflict inside. So yeah, I think that's really a magical process that creates real magic when we commit to it.
Oh my gosh, Clara, this is like so perfect in alignment with Shell's podcast. If you guys haven't listened to Shell's, you have to, because these go hand in hand.
They go together. Yeah, you can use like Shell's stuff to do what you're talking about. And yeah, I think it's so important to write. I'll have clients do that a lot, is write down 3 stories that they're telling themselves, like the negative stories. Like for me, I'm normally working with like body image. So like, you know, I'm fat, or I can't get pregnant is a lot of the stuff that I work with. And then 3 that are positive, and just say like, which one would you choose? Like, cause you get to choose, you know, it kind of allows them to make that choice. Like I could choose these thoughts, or I could choose these thoughts. Which ones do I want? You know? Mm-hmm. So I love that. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So Cristina, where can our listeners find you?
So they can find me where you found me, which is Instagram. Just searching Cristina Bold there. They can find me on my website, which is CristinaBold.com, or on Facebook.
Perfect.
The same name everywhere.
And we will link all of that in the show notes as well. So Cristina, it was such an honor to have you on today. We hope that the fog subsides
a little bit. I am living really on the beach, and sometimes it looks like a microclimate here. Like the rest of the city is sunny, but here we are staying in a cloud of fog, and it's separate from the rest of the reality. So hopefully it will start fading away and dissolving itself. Ladies, thank you so much. Clara,
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me for this lovely conversation. I totally enjoyed it. And hopefully also our listeners will be finding lots of value in it.
I'm sure they will. So thank you so much, Cristina.
Thank you.